Hello, everyone. My name is Rachayata, and I welcome you all to another episode of Logistics Insiders Leaders Speak, where we invite celebrated leaders of the supply chain industry to share their point of view about various trends and topics. Now, when I was a rookie, as I thought about supply chains, and that was quite rare, I'd immediately picture a truck loaded with many cartons filled with some or the other kind of cargo. But now that I'm aware of what the industry does, how important it is, and how it does what it does, I not only think about the cargo, but also about the truck. Confused? Now, to explain, I'm amazed at the intricacies of supply chains, how it all works in sync to put together a single item. And in the present day, the immediate next thought is that of how all of it was disrupted in one way or the other, and eventually how it is all connected. To sum up, supply chains have become complex. In fact, I would say as complex as they are resilient vis a vis, say, 5 years ago. Moving on, today we have an industry member that has over 19 years of experience in supply chain operations, including procurement, strategic sourcing, digital transformation, and supply relationship management. He's an expert at driving cost efficiencies while helping the organizations ace the procurement game, as well as indulging in supplier engagement. So, without taking much time, I'd like our guest to join me on screen, Mr. Nikil Puri, Vice President Sourcing and Planning, Yokohama Off Highway Tires. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Richeta. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure, sir. So let's dive right in. So, as you told me during our initial conversation, was that off-highway tires are those which aren't put to conventional uses like cars, buses, and trucks. Instead, they are the ones that are used in vehicles that operate in areas like fields, mines, factories, forests, among others. So there's also the fact that they can be customized according to end user needs, meaning that they are also manufactured differently. Since off-highway tires have different raw material needs, how does Yokohama Tires manage its procurement vertical, sourcing raw materials of the right quality and the kind?
So, thank you, Richeta. So, it's a very pertinent question. So, what we do is, we have a very robust process when it comes to qualification and selection of our raw material suppliers. So, we have a dedicated R&D team which is in-house, where it sits in within India itself. So, there are two ways in which a new supplier is onboarded, whether it comes from the customer demand, if some customer requires a particular application and for that new application a specific raw material is required, then our R&D comes up and uh, present their requirements to us, and then we set out uh, into our global supply chain model where we have all the suppliers for these categories mapped out into our database, and we actually approach them. So once they are getting approached, so they there is a onboarding process, a standard onboarding process. The qualification happens, the field trials happen, the laboratory tests happen, and ultimately they are getting onboarded into the system itself.
Right.
So that's how we do it.
Right, right. So I'll talk next about the tire industry in general. So under the entire purview of it, what is your opinion about supply diversification and its role in building resilience, which is, I would say, the utmost necessity for supply chains in today's world?
So when it comes to resilience, it does not hold true only for tire industry. It actually is applicable for all the industries, irrespective of the nature of the product that they are making.
Hmm.
So what the resilience calls upon is you need to have a diversified supplier base. So there was a time before pandemics when all the supply chains people had their sole suppliers. There is no longer a concept of sole suppliers. We need to have a mitigation in place, considering we are living in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex in nature. So
Right.
apart from pandemic, which was once in a lifetime situation, it will not happen again. Uh, Hopefully so. but there are other disruptions that happen across the globe in
Hmm.
various forms. So you need to have a good geographical mix. So when it comes to diversification, you need to have a geographical. You cannot have your supply chain constrained to one geography. So that
Hmm.
is putting you in a risk. So you need to start involving suppliers in your business plans. So are they aware about your expansion plans? It should not happen. The customers are expanding, but suppliers do not get time to expand. So they also need to ramp up their capacities. So in all, what I would say is, when it comes to diversification and resilience, you need to have all your suppliers in arms. You
Hmm.
cannot keep them at a length. So you need to involve. You need to have a proper governance mechanism. Keep on discussing with them, and then you build a resilience into the system.
Right, right. I totally agree. In fact, I was going through your profile on LinkedIn, and I saw this post that said that the biggest enemy of supply chains is bad communication. And now that you're saying it out loud, I think it's not just for the internal teams, but of course the suppliers as well. They need to be treated more as a business partner than just suppliers. Talking
In fact,
about.
just touching base on this communication topic is what
Hmm,
more often than not, a common mistake that happens in supply chain verticals all across the globe is when the business is doing good, we communicate a lot with suppliers. But
yes.
when, because of demand supply variation, when this business is not doing good and you have a lesser demand, that is the time when you need to step up and increase your communication.
Hmm, hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So we touched upon COVID. Now, what are the supply chain complexities that are unique to the tire industry in general, and how did COVID, add on to it?
So, uh, the I'll come upon in COVID, but the COVID did not had much of the disruptions. But when we talk about all the supply chain complexity that are unique to this industry, tire industry. So the major raw material, that is natural rubber. So
Hmm,
natural rubber, as the name suggests, is actually cultivated and grown in the fields, and
right.
accordingly the it is tapped. So what happens is the environment, the weather conditions is different across the geographies, across the globe. The winter will be at one point in time in some part of the world, and at other point it will be different. So what you need to map is when at that point of time the cultivation goes down, you cannot do the tapping, you cannot take out the latex and all.
Right.
Accordingly, so you have to map your supply chain. You have to have your timing from at what timing the material will come from which region.
Hmm,
COVID did not bring any new additions in specific, I would say, but yes, COVID actually made us very self-conscious in managing our inventories and in actually the lead times, the whole managing the supply chain. So we are being very conscious how much the inventory levels are to be kept at the suppliers, and whether we are bringing up the suppliers near to our facility in
hmm.
forms of vendor managed inventory, and accordingly making sure there are no disruptions that we encountered during the COVID times.
Right, right. And moving on, could you tell us about the key metrics that can be used to measure the efficiency of a supply chain? We put in a lot of effort to, make sure that everything goes on smoothly, be it inbound or outbound supply chains. But how to measure if it's doing so, and how rightly so?
The biggest metric in a supply chain. So there are three to four major metrics across the organizations which goes around. So
Hmm,
the main which I consider is OTIF, or which is called on time in full or on time delivery, which is the
okay.
key metric. Any organization or a supplier in the whole value chain, they have to. So if it is a tier one supplier or a tier two, tier three, tier four, so the ultimately the on time deliveries is very important. Otherwise, the whole supply chain gets disrupted.
Hmm,
Then the lead times. Today, customer wants their orders on yesterday basis. So, but the supply chain is scattered across the globe. So how are you making sure that your lead times are getting reduced, whether you are serving to your customers or whether you are buying raw materials from your vendors? So
Hmm.
ultimately, the lead time is very important. I have seen organizations where people will pay at least a small premium to make sure the lead time is getting reduced, because that ultimately increases your revenue, because you have a lot more orders coming in. Then cost is always a metric. You
Hmm.
cannot leave cost apart. So cost is always at the helm of all the metrics
Hmm.
when it comes to supply chain and procurement. One of the key metric that I would want to touch upon is the response time. When I look at uh, the metric is that how much responsive the supply chain is, at how fast we can respond, whether we are responding to our customers or whether
Hmm.
my suppliers, when I'm measuring my suppliers performance, how much they are able to respond in time. So because there will be times that will be coming where the demands will vary, how fast they can adapt to it.
Right.
Okay, when can they come think out of the box? So
Hmm.
response time, in my view, is a very key metric. So these are some of the key metrics wherein we can measure the efficiency of a supply chain.
Right, right. That was truly interesting. I'll touch upon a very, buzzword, a very big buzzword of the industry, sustainability. Now,
Yeah.
as you said, the tires are made from natural rubber, and it somehow feels that they are, very deeply connected, being sustainable and rubber cultivation. So how
Yeah.
do you incorporate sustainability and environmental responsibility into the tire supply chain, considering factors like the disposal of tires or the recycling of tires?
So when it comes to sustainability and environmental responsibility, sustainability, as you rightly said, is the buzzword that has been around for now close to 4 or 5 years, and it is going to remain in place.
Yes.
So sustainability just not talks about recycling. Sustainability, in my first is, are you reducing it? First, are you reducing the carbon footprint? Are
Hmm.
you reusing it? So we take some of the measures. A lot of our input materials comes into some sort of packaging. So we have developed a system working with our vendors wherein our packaging gets reused. When we take out the material, we send back those packages. Then again, the material comes freshly loaded into the systems.
Right.
Then ultimately, then a recycling comes.
Hmm.
So recycling in tires, so there is a process called pyrolysis. It has been around. There are global large and small waste tire refineries worldwide who are actually doing this. So it is a process where the waste tires are put into, and then you salvage some of the oils, carbon blacks, which can be actually used again into the system and all.
Hmm.
Then there are regulations across the geography. If you the climate change, the GOP model, which is being talked about across the globe. So many countries, the consortiums are coming around, and they are actually formulating some regulations, not only for tire industry, but in all the commodities that are dependent on agriculture, where you actually take out things, whether it is food related, beverage related, grains, or anything else. So like there in for similar to this, the top of my mind comes is EUDR, European Union Deforestation Regulation, wherein
Okay.
all the suppliers or members in the supply chain have to comply by that regulations and all. So we
Hmm.
are taking some baby steps in the organization where we are just not focusing on only recycling, but also reducing it and reusing the materials time and again.
Hmm. Right. I think these three concepts, reuse,
Yeah,
reduce, and recycle, they together work like a charm. Now,
yeah.
since you also have some experience of the telecoms industry, I would like to end this with just one question on it, about fiber optics. Now, it is said to be very complex with suppliers based across the world. How can we navigate this terrain considering the diverse customs regulations, tariffs, and compliance requirements? So this is more like, during the exam processes.
So Coming back to, yes, I have worked in actually optical fiber market for a fair bit of time. So as you have rightly pointed out, the suppliers are actually spread across the geography, not in optical fiber, but today the whole supply chain is scattered.
Right.
But to way to navigate around these custom tariffs and all is good thing is governments are taking a cue around it, and they have signed a good trade agreements with majority of the countries globally. So there are those are called SEPA, SESA, or FTAs, free trade agreements with many of the South Asian countries or ASEAN group. Okay, whether it is a what should I say? It is people are now we are signing up with the Middle East also. So
Hmm.
accordingly, you can take cognizant of that fact that where are these trade tariffs actually you are getting those benefits, and then you can start sourcing and procuring your materials from there because government is actually promoting that between the trade relationship. Second, I would say is people all often come back to me and say that we don't know about the supply chain, let's say in eastern part of Asia or maybe the western part of the world. We are present in India. This was the case a decade ago. Today, we are living in a digital world. All the information is actually available. So, if
Right.
you want to put your mind and energy and resources to it, you can find out which are the suppliers present across the globe who are well versed, and then you can, before you sending out the RFQs and start discussion, actually you start with the compliance requirements. They may not know what are the compliances that are required in your country, so you can have initial discussions where you can bring in your R&D team and your legal compliances team to make sure that we are on same page and then navigate through all these barriers.
Hmm, hmm. Right, I totally agree. I mean, with the kind of technology and the ability to connect to somebody sitting in a completely different part of the world, it's just amazing. You can not just, it's just a click of a button away. So many gigabytes, or I would say million gigabytes of information just at your hand, and then with just a click you can connect to a person and then get your doubts cleared or get xyz information. So I think that would be
Similar to
it.
what
And
we are doing, we are connected virtually.
right,
So
absolutely.
boundaries
Absolutely.
are eliminated now.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So that would be it. And to conclude, I would say that the procurement function plays a very crucial role in modern supply chains, and that must operate amidst multiple disruptions. And the procurement function also ensures the smooth functioning, considering that it's very critical to the beginning stage. It has evolved into a strategic function for companies, contributing to their competitive advantage by utilizing external resources efficiently. And I'm sure that leaders like you are just to take it forward. Nikhil, thank you so much for taking out time for us today. And you have a
My
good
pleasure.
rest of the day. It was a pleasure having you here. And before I leave, I'd also like to thank our wonderful audience for joining us. And we hope that the session was as interesting for you as it was for us. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and stay safe.
Thank you, Rucheta, for having me.
Thank you so much, Nikhil.